The priest reveals that Ghislan's power is actually divine power, before sacrificing himself to fully open the rift. Ghislan enters to stop it but faces the terrifying Equidama. Just as he is overwhelmed, Aiden, Gillian, and Wendy arrive to help, leading to a final desperate battle. In the next scene, Rosalind finally returns to the palace. Badly injured and exhausted, she stands before her father and, overwhelmed with emotion, begins crying pitifully as she calls out to him. Her father immediately embraces her and reassures her that as long as she is safe, that is all that matters to him. He then turns toward Ghislan and sincerely thanks him for saving Rosalind. Ghislan simply responds with a smile. Afterward, everyone gathers together for an important meeting. Ghislan addresses the king and informs him that there is something important he needs to reveal. He explains that the Salvation Church is actually a cult working together with the ducal house. He also reveals that the person who kidnapped Lady Rosalind was a priest of the Salvation Church. The king's subordinate is shocked by this revelation and struggles to believe that such a cult could exist. Ghislan then explains that the cult possesses the ability to create zones where mana becomes completely ineffective. They can also transform ordinary people into terrifying monsters. He further reveals that behind the scenes, the cult has been constructing a catastrophic phenomenon known as the Rift, with the ultimate goal of bringing down the entire kingdom. The king's subordinate becomes even more confused and demands that Ghislan slow down, unable to understand how monsters and disasters could possibly be connected to the situation. Ghislan then asks his subordinate to explain everything in greater detail. His subordinate begins explaining that the rift can be thought of as a door connecting their world to another world. Beyond that door, an unknown entity from the other side had been attempting to force its way into their world. The king then asks about the identity of this mysterious entity. Ghislan reveals that Father Piote of the Juliana Church helped him stop the rift. The king is left stunned by the existence of an otherworldly being possessing unimaginable power. He realizes that such a phenomenon could only be described as a true disaster. He then recalls that the Kingdom of Luthania has never recognized any faith outside its own churches, including the Juliana Church. Despite this, a heretical force has somehow been operating secretly right in the heart of the kingdom. Ghislan explains that what matters now is the fact that the ducal house of Delphine, one of the most powerful forces in the kingdom, has joined hands with the Salvation Church and its otherworldly power. Their goal is not merely to bring disaster upon the kingdom. They intend to spread destruction across the entire continent. The king realizes that Ghislan is warning them that their strength alone may not be enough to face such a threat. The king then calls for his knight, Toleo, and orders him to immediately summon every archbishop and every noble in the capital. He declares that he will personally preside over the council and insists that not a single person be left out. Toleo salutes and immediately accepts the king's command. The king then issues another order. He declares the Salvation Church to be a cult hostile to the kingdom and commands his forces to hunt down everyone involved with it, regardless of their rank. He orders this declaration to be announced throughout the entire kingdom and to every allied nation as well. From that moment onward, the king officially names the ducal house of Delphine an enemy of the kingdom for conspiring with a hostile cult. He declares that, in the name of the Kingdom of Luthania, the Delphine family will be held accountable for all of their crimes. Everyone present is left completely shocked by the king's decision. Ghislan, however, expected nothing less from Marquis Bradford. He realizes that if the churches of the kingdom begin to move against their enemies, they will have an entire army of allies standing behind them. Among those potential allies are especially the followers of the goddess of war, including one of the 7 greats of the continent, Parniel, the Saintess of War. Ghislan realizes that if Parniel decides to stand with them, their position will become far stronger. With that thought in mind, Ghislan playfully smirks. The scene then shifts smoothly to Castle Eclipse, in the Delphine Duchy. Inside the castle, Josef is trembling with rage. He violently slams his hand against the table and erupts in fury. He angrily condemns Levier as an arrogant and useless wretch. Even if Levier had failed to kill Ghislan, Josef believes that he should have at least opened the rift successfully. Because of Levier's failure, the royalists have now learned about both the Salvation Church and the rift. Josef fears that if Ghislan begins taking serious action, decades of work carried out from the shadows will all be reduced to nothing. Grinding his teeth in frustration, Josef curses Ghislan and Perdium. He bitterly regrets not killing Ghislan back then. However, Josef refuses to accept that everything is over. Despite the situation, he convinces himself that it is not over yet and prepares to continue fighting. Just as Joseph is about to say what he intends to do next, a dark and red aura suddenly appears before him and surrounds him. Joseph is immediately shocked by the mysterious presence. He then realizes the identity of the person standing before him. It is none other than Duke Delphine. The moment Joseph recognizes him, he becomes completely terrified. Duke Delphine finally reveals that, in the end, Raul Josef has forced him to personally step forward. Hearing this, Raul Josef's eyes widen in fear. Raul Josef immediately drops to his knees and respectfully addresses Duke Delphine as his lord and master. He introduces himself as his servant and pays his respects, while nervously wondering what could have brought the Duke to such a wretched place. Duke Delphine reminds Raul that he had given him a chance. He then points out that Lavier, the man sent by them, was killed by Ghislan's hands. The Salvation Church has also been exposed, and even the rift itself has been revealed. Raul lowers his head in shame. Duke Delphine then makes it clear that he wants to know whether any part of what he has said is incorrect. Raul trembles in fear and apologizes to his lord. He admits that he has no excuse for his failure. Duke Delphine orders Raul to raise his head. He then questions how long Raul has been bringing him nothing but failure. Raul is left shocked by his words. Duke Delphine reminds him that Raul had always delivered results. Because of that, the Duke never bothered to ask how Raul accomplished his tasks. He never cared about the process, because the results alone had always been enough. But this time, things have gone too far. Duke Delphine clenches his fist in anger. Terrified, Raul desperately tries to defend himself. He reveals that there is not just one rift. The plan was only to open the rift earlier than originally intended, and Raul insists that this was nothing more than a minor miscalculation. He desperately begs for one final chance and swears that he will not fail again if Duke Delphine gives him another opportunity. Instead of responding with anger, Duke Delphine calmly tells Raul that he has grown old. He reminds Raul that he has followed him for all these years and has never once had the chance to rest. Raul is shocked by those words. Realizing what is about to happen, Raul finally accepts his fate. He begins repeatedly slamming his head against the ground, as he recalls how the Salvation Church had taken him in when he was an orphan. However, their hollow god and empty revelations had never meant anything to him. Everything changed on the day Raul met Duke Delphine. He had witnessed the Duke's overwhelming ambition to overturn the kingdom. From that moment onward, Raul swore to dedicate everything he possessed to that grand ambition. Duke Delphine silently glares at Raul. Raul continues slamming his head against the ground until blood begins pouring from his head. Despite the pain, he desperately declares that he has spent decades serving the Duke. He gave his entire life to that cause. He gave his blood. He gave his life. He gave everything he had. With tears continuously falling from his eyes and blood covering his face, Raul desperately begs Duke Delphine to give him just one last chance. Duke Delphine silently looks at Raul. After a moment, he turns his back and calmly declares that he had never once doubted Raul's loyalty. He then tells Raul to rest easy. With those final words, Duke Delphine leaves, disappearing from the scene and leaving Raul behind. After returning to his chamber, Raul believed he could finally rest easy. At that moment, Balzac arrived. Raul wondered why Balzac had come to see him. Balzac had come to say goodbye to his friend. Hearing those words, Raul was shocked. He then accepted his fate. Balzac raised his sword and gave Raul one final chance to speak. Raul smiled and entrusted Duke Delphine to Balzac's care, asking him to serve his grace well. Balzac promised that he would. Without hesitation, Balzac swung his sword and killed Raul. After Raul's death, the scene shifted to Duke Delphine. One of his employees approached him and awaited his orders. Duke Delphine ordered that an envoy be sent to the Salvation Church. He specifically instructed them to inform Verhem Radran II that they would bring the King of Luthania over to their side.